Welcome to this Expert mini-module on CBM Goal Setting. In Project Expert, we're developing and testing a program to support teacher expertise in data-based instruction and improve outcomes for upper elementary students with persistent reading challenges. We have 3 guiding questions for this module. Throughout this module, we'll think through content related to the benefits of using goals and what goes into an appropriate goal. Then we'll dive into how to calculate a student's goal. Why do we set goals? Goals give us a common target to work towards, and it helps us know if we're on the right track or if our instructional approach needs to change. Goals also hold us accountable for improving student outcomes, and goals can be motivating for teachers, students, or family. So what goes into an appropriate goal? The best goals are those that balance being ambitious yet reasonable. High expectations are healthy for students, and we want to promote meaningful change for this student. However, it's also helpful to craft goals that are reasonable and attainable. Experiencing success is powerful. Most importantly, for students receiving intervention, we want their goal to be individualized to their needs. What makes sense for this student? Now let's discuss what goes into a goal. The goal is the target we're aiming for. To know where we want to end up, we must know where we're starting. This is called the baseline. Next, how much do we expect the student to grow? This is their expected growth. The baseline plus how much we expect them to grow equals the goal. Let's take a closer look at baseline. Before we can settle on a goal for the student, we need to know where we're starting. That's the purpose of the baseline data. How are they performing right now? With upper elementary students in reading, we typically measure their oral reading fluency by asking them to read 3 to 4 one-minute passages in one sitting. The median or middle value of these scores will be the first data point on the student's graph. If you can't take the median, average the middle scores. In this example, the student read 45, 35, and 40 words correct per minute. The median of these 3 is 40, so this is that student's baseline. Now let's take a closer look at expected growth. Expected growth is made of 2 elements, the rate of growth and the time we have. The rate of growth is thought of as how quickly do we expect this student will grow. Often we think of it as growth per week, such as an increase of 1.5 words correct per minute per week. With time, what is the time frame? Educational goals are about reaching a certain point by a certain time. How much time do we have? This might be the intervention period, the quarter semester, or the school year. How quickly the student will grow over a specific amount of time will help us calculate their expected growth. As an example, say your class is having a speed walking competition. You want to set a reasonable but ambitious benchmark. Remember, we need to know the rate, how fast we expect our students to go, plus how much time we have. So to do this, you know that a 15-minute mile is a good speed walking pace for your kids. That's your rate, 1 mile per 15 minutes. Then you also need to know the time or duration. How much time do we have? Well, afternoon recess for your class is 30 minutes. So you know that your students might reasonably walk at 15-minute mile, 30-minute recess. So a reasonable expected growth for your class, or benchmark for the speed walking competition, could be 2 miles covered during afternoon recess. Now let's see what a goal looks like with these pieces in mind. Let's say this is the student's baseline in orange. Then we're starting here at this date, and the intervention goes until this time point. Imagine we start the goal at the baseline, and we move it to the end of our intervention period. If we expected no growth at all, this would be the goal. This is our deadline here. However, we need to incorporate the growth we expect. So assume we think the student will grow at this rate till the end of time. Our goal is the student's growth at the end of this period. So we take how much we expect them to grow over time and limit it based on the time we have. Those 2 pieces together give us our goal. However, we need to calculate this expected rate of growth. It isn't something we would just know inherently. So now that we know what goes into a goal, let's talk about how we set the goals. The National Center on Intensive Intervention recommends 3 options for establishing goals. The first is using benchmarks. Publishers and researchers have found critical goals that indicate whether students are on track or not. Or some districts calculate their own based on their entire population of students. Benchmark goals are helpful to aim for most students, but may not be reasonable for students performing far below grade level. Another option is to calculate a goal based on a weekly rate of improvement. Research has provided us with a general understanding of how students, on average, grow on oral reading fluency CBMs from week to week. Typically, students in elementary school improve by about 1 to 1.5 words correct per minute per week, on average. Using this information to craft a goal for your student can be helpful when data suggests your student may improve at a typical rate, but reaching the benchmark goal by the end of this period isn't reasonable. For data-based individualization, we'll focus on this third option, which is to compare the student's performance to their own prior performance, rather than to a national norm. This option is often used for setting individualized education goals, or for those students performing far below grade level, who are often candidates for data-based individualization. Let's take a closer look at setting a goal with those national growth norms. The first step of setting a goal with national growth norms is to start with the student's baseline. Remember, this is the median of the first 3 scores. Then we consider if the benchmark goal is appropriate or not. Remember, these are the goals set by publishers or districts that are reasonable for most, but not all students. For students well below grade level, it's likely not reasonable to expect them, even with ambitious growth, to reach the benchmark by the end of the year. Once we decide an individualized goal is appropriate, we consider if we can expect the student to grow at a typical rate. If we do, we can refer to what research has told us about how students grow on average. We'll talk more about this next. And lastly, we'll need to know how many weeks are left from now until the end of the intervention period. Let's look at national norms for growth rates. Research has shown us how students, on average, in different grades, grow on ORF from week to week. For example, students in 3rd grade grow, on average, by 1.1 words correct per minute each week. However, students in 3rd grade who grow at a relatively faster rate grow on average by 1.4 words correct per minute. This might be a more ambitious rate of growth to strive for. To calculate the national growth rate goal, we add the growth we expect for the student to where they started. That's our goal for them. Growth over the year can be thought of as the growth we expect the student to make each week times the number of weeks left in school. Let's try this method now with some fictitious numbers. First, we write down where they started, their baseline. Let's say it's 45. Next, we settled on a reasonable yet ambitious rate of growth per week for this student. In this example, we chose 1.5. Next, we multiply this by the weeks left in the school year to calculate how much growth they'll make this year. Baseline plus their growth over the year equals the goal. In this case, that's 75 words correct per minute by the end of the year. Let's practice. Imagine you're working with Lisa, a 3rd grader in your reading intervention group. It's November when she joins your reading group, and her most recent ORF data showed her reading 60 words correct per minute. You know that by the end of the year, the benchmark is 114 words correct per minute. You don't think that goal is individualized enough for Lisa, but you still want to set an ambitious goal. Using the formula and the information on this page, pause now to calculate the goal on your own. Our goal is 103 words correct per minute for Lisa at the end of the year. How does that compare to your goal? Let's show how we got that goal. With 30 weeks left in the year, what's an appropriate ambitious goal for Lisa? Multiply the number of weeks, 30, by the rate of growth you're estimating. Ambitious growth for a third grader is 1.4 words correct per minute per week increase, so we chose that. However, there isn't one right answer. We multiply the weeks, 30, by our expected rate of growth, 1.4, to get a total rate of growth from now to the end of the year of 42. We add 42 to her baseline, where she started, 60, to get the final goal of 103 words correct per minute for Lisa. Let's take a moment to reflect on goal setting. If you need a bit more time, pause the video to think about these questions. Think about a student you've worked with who receives or received intensive intervention. What reasons might you want to set an individualized goal for that student? Why might you use an individualized goal versus a grade level end of year benchmark for that student? We use individualized goals when other goals would not be appropriate, ambitious but reasonable, for this student to measure their progress at this time. Let's review our guiding questions. Why do we set goals? Goals give us a common target to work towards, and also a concrete benchmark to compare progress against during and after intervention. What makes an appropriate goal? Appropriate goals are ambitious, meaningful, reasonable, and individualized. How do I determine a student's goal? We take their baseline plus their expected growth equals their goal. The baseline is the median of 3+ scores. Their expected growth is an ambitious but expected growth over a specific time period. Thank you for your time and engagement during this mini training module. Check out our Project Expert YouTube channel for other mini modules and resources to support data-based decision-making and reading. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For questions about Project Expert, please contact the Principal Investigator, Dr. Jessica Tost, at the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Tost's email is jrtost@austin.utexas.edu. Project Expert is supported by a grant from the Institute of Education Sciences, U.S. Department of Education.